looking ahead, definitely I think the two axioms that the Prime Minister has given us, Bharat first and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, these will be the two guiding axioms of the Indian foreign policy. So, and together we are very confident it will position us as Vishwabandhu.
Bharat first, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and Vishwabandhu are terms that have become synonymous with the Modi government's foreign policy, isn't it? Modi 3.0 has had a challenging 100 days in terms of geopolitics. The biggest headache, of course, has to be Bangladesh. The whole situation in India's eastern neighbor has placed the Modi government under enormous pressure, especially with India housing Sheikh Hasina, among other issues surrounding the regime change in Dhaka. Anyway, just days after taking charge as Prime Minister for a record third time, Modi set out for the G7 summit. Why was India's participation important? Well, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in fact called Modi during the Lok Sabha election campaign to ensure his participation. And he travelled to Italy just 4 days after his swearing in. Modi spent most of his time in bilateral meetings with leaders from the UK, France, Germany, Japan and Ukraine President Zelensky as well, who was a special invitee. After the photo op with all the leaders, he spent a few minutes with Joe Biden as well. All in all, the G7 outreach gave him the opportunity to meet global leaders and set priorities for his new term in office. Given India is the 5th largest economy in the world, what course will India have at G7 in the future remains to be seen. But right now, it would be safe to say that India is still on the margins and Jaishankar, for one, does not seem too pleased about it.
There is a club, the BRICS. Why this club? And do you consider that the BRICS will expand?
Well, to be honest, why the club? Because there was another club. It was called the G7 and you wouldn't let anybody else into that club. So we said we'll go and form our own club.
Well, the G7 was only the beginning. The biggest challenge for India is the Russia-Ukraine situation. Modi first visited Russia in what was a public display of great camaraderie with Vladimir Putin, a warm hug, a golf cart ride and whatnot. What's interesting is Modi chose Russia for his first bilateral visit. It was a clear change from his practice of visiting India's South Asian neighbors after assuming premiership. In 2014 it was Bhutan and in 2019 it was Maldives and Sri Lanka. Why Moscow this time? Was it to show Putin his support amid economic and diplomatic isolation of Russia, or was it because of concerns over the growing Russia-China bonding is up for discussion, but nevertheless it was a significant move. All of this only irked Zelensky, who tweeted out his disappointment. But Modi did visit Ukraine as well. Zelensky's remarks after the meeting, though, were not positive. He said, if India changes its attitude towards Russia, the war will end. Some viewed Modi's Ukraine visit as just a formality to keep the West happy, but he spoke to Joe Biden to brief him about his visit and also followed it up with a conversation with Putin. In that phone call, Modi reportedly offered that National Security Advisor Ajit Doval would visit Russia and discuss ideas related to peace. And the outcome was that Ajit Doval just a few days ago met with Putin in St. Petersburg. Is peace Europe on Modi 3.0 agenda? And then of course, Asia. Southeast Asia in particular. Act East is the word, an extension of the Look East policy. Modi visited Singapore and Brunei. This is the first time an Indian Prime Minister has visited Brunei in 40 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Now the Act East policy is India's move to counter China's influence in Southeast Asia. The South China Sea is key as it is strategically very important as a major shipping route and as a resource-rich area. China has sought an aggressive approach with expansionist claims over islands like the Paracels, Spratly and Scarborough Shoal, which are also contested by Vietnam, the Philippines and Malaysia. All of them are countries that belong to the Association of Southeast Nations or ASEAN. India's position on the South China Sea has evolved over the years, shifting from a cautious, neutral stance to one that is now quite direct. For example, India expressed support for the Philippines when its routine mission was disrupted near 2nd Thomas Shoal in the Spratly Islands. So India is looking to position itself as China's alternative. Europe and Asia addressed in the first 100 days of the Modi 3.0 regime at a time when things are at a delicate situation, especially with regards to Russia and Ukraine. Foreign policy priorities have been made clear by the Modi 3.0 regime.